Now we come to what I claim to be my favorite Quentin Tarantino movie, which I haven't seen in a little while, so I was very curious to go back after having watched all of them in a row to see if I continue to hold this up to be my favorite of his films. And after having just watched this a couple nights ago, yes, it is still my favorite Quentin Tarantino movie. It just works for me in all the right ways. See, here's an interesting thing for me when it comes to hypocrisy. All is good and well when it's a foreign villain and foreign historical events that make other people look bad. But when it makes Americans and their history look bad, then all of a sudden it's controversial. So you can beat up the Nazis all day and make them look like pieces of shit, because fuck Germany, right? That's not us. But as soon as you bring up slavery and the shit that happened right here, all of a sudden some Americans, not all of course, most are, more on my side of things, like, yeah, those are pieces of shit, and that's a terrible part of our history, and we should acknowledge it more. We should pay attention to how horrible it was, and, look for signs so that it can never, ever even slightly happen again. And that we can always better ourselves as a nation and get away from racism altogether. But yeah, of course, there was going to be more controversy surrounding this one than any other film that he had made at that time, and still to this day, because of slavery. Because some Americans don't like to remember how fucked we were. And some wish that we never got away from it, but that's a whole different story. So, yeah. Django Unchained. Django? The D is silent. I don't think I've never seen a Django movie. The old-time ones, the Western ones. So, I don't know if there's any homages in there or whatnot, but I'm not the biggest Western fan, which I feel like is even more of a testament to how much I love this movie, because I'm not the biggest Western fan. I don't dislike them, but for me, Westerns are almost always the same film. Now, in a previous video, I had mentioned how if you are not a big fan, or if you just straight out don't like a certain genre or subgenre of something, whether it be music or any form of entertainment, that you always seem to think that that thing is always the same thing over and over and over again. So I think that rings true here, making, kind of further confirming my point. But, I don't want to say I dislike them, because I don't. There are some fantastic ones. I mean, who doesn't love Tombstone? Val Kilmer and Kurt Russell and all this. That is, it's a great movie. Come on. Silverado is a fucking great movie. The Man with No Name trilogy, the Good, Bad, and Ugly, the Fistful of Dollars, and for a few dollars more. I know I said those out of order, but Good, Bad, and the Ugly is obviously the most popular of the trilogy. But yeah, there's plenty, and I could mention more, of course, but it's not like I dislike Westerns. I've probably seen definitely less than 50 Westerns ever. I'd probably say somewhere around the 30 to 40 mark. So my Western knowledge isn't that great. But, this is easily my favorite of all of them, no doubt. But, this is one of my favorite movies ever made. So that's not really saying much. Alright, so we have got Christoph Waltz in here yet again, except for this time he's playing an extremely likable character that you're allowed to like because he's amazing. And, in the last movie he plays this total piece of shit that's charismatic, and you want to hate him, but you're like, oh, he's so funny and charming and hilarious, and fuck, I hate this guy, but I like him. In this one, it was like a relief to be like, yes, thank you, you're amazing in this movie, and I can love you, and I can feel confident about that, and not have to, chastise myself once I leave the theater. Like, you liked that piece of shit? You liked that piece of shit? What are you, a racist asshole? And then, of course, we've got Leonardo Dicaprio in here, which, big Leo fan, always have been. want to say the first time I saw Leo. That's a good question. I mean, I remember I saw Titanic, of course, in theaters in '97. I saw it 3 times, actually, in theaters. And I still love that movie to this day. Not a big fan of the ending where she throws the fucking thing in the water and all that. But outside of that, I think it's a fucking fantastic film. So I know it's one of those movies that's popular to hate. And, you know, I don't really care about that shit. I like what I like. End of story. But I don't know where he became like the actor that I so highly regard that he is today. I can't remember what movie really drove that home, because his performance in What's Eating Gilbert Grape, I think, is what kind of put him on the map as an actor. That was well before, what was that, 93, I want to say, like 4 years prior to Titanic, which, if I remember correctly, he's like 21 years old in Gilbert Grape, but he looks like he's like 14 or 15 years old. And then I think maybe it was Catch Me If You Can. Huge Catch Me If You Can fan. One of my favorite Spielberg movies. And I remember him playing Frank William Abagnale Jr. in that movie, and just blowing me away. Just thinking, wow, this kid really is coming to his own. And Gangs of New York. Although outshined by Daniel Day-Lewis, who gives maybe the best performance ever on screen with, Bill the Butcher, right? Bill the Butcher. Which I seriously, I will argue that to be one of, like, either the greatest performance or one of the greatest performances, like top 5 ever, for sure. So, that's a tough act to follow, but he's still very good at it. And there's just, you can go through the list. Ever since, like, Catch Me If You Can. I actually really like The Beach, which I know a lot of people didn't like that movie, but I thought he was great in it, and I really like that movie. There's very few films of his that I've seen that I wasn't a big fan of, and I've seen, I want to say I've seen every single thing he's done. Definitely post-Titanic, I've seen every movie he's made. So anyway, all right, let's move on. But I'm a big Leo fan, so when he was announced to be in this, it was like, Leonardo DiCaprio, who's like one of my favorite actors ever, is working with one of my favorite directors ever. Yes. And Christoph Waltz was coming back. Now, Jamie Foxx. Not super familiar with Jamie Foxx. One really great movie that he was in that almost no one ever talks about, which is a damn shame because it's fucking amazing, is Collateral with Tom Cruise. That movie's fantastic. So for some reason you haven't seen that movie, absolutely watch it. It's excellent. And then, of course, his performance as Ray in the Ray Charles story is excellent. But, I mostly just knew him more from, like, comedic type performances and whatnot. I knew he was able to give dramatic performances. I want to say Ray came out before this, yeah. So I was aware, but I wasn't uber familiar with him. But I just think he's freaking perfect in this movie. He is like Django Unchained. No, he fits the role so damn well. This is great casting. As usual, Tarantino makes incredible casting decisions. And Samuel L. Jackson in this, I remember when this came out and all the controversy surrounding it, and Spike Lee and all this shit about them not being able to say the words that they have here, and how he's not he shouldn't be able to get away with it, and this and that. And it's like, his scripts have been saying those words since Reservoir Dogs, but now, because it's about slavery and a white man's making it, I don't know, that shit just annoys the fuck out of me, okay? But I remember watching interviews like crazy about this. I know Leo had like a full-on breakdown because he just didn't want to say some of the words in here, the N-word, which... I hate that. I'm not going to get into it. But regardless, he got really fucked up about it, which I completely understand. Just screaming that word at black people on a movie. That would be terrible. That would be horrible to do. I understand that completely. But Samuel L. Jackson, I remember watching this interview with him, and he was saying that he knows, because of his working with Quentin Tarantino and the roles that he gives him, he says that because every single time he gives him a script where he's in the movie, he always writes him to be the smartest person in that film, and he knows because of that, there's no way he would be able to be racist. Quentin Tarantino is about as far from racist as you can get. Okay, I think Quentin Tarantino wants to be black. That's the exact opposite of racism. That's more like jealousy. So I think he just wants to be inducted into the tribe. Like, please take me. You guys are so cool. I want to be a part of your your group here. So to call him racist is just absolutely asinine to me. Anyway, okay. This movie's about racism, so I feel like I'm warranted in even discussing this. But it was such a big controversy when it came out. This movie got so much shit. But, I mean, it won a couple Academy Awards. It got Waltz's second Oscar win with Quentin Tarantino and screenplay, right? Which, yeah, this screenplay is fucking fantastic. So, but that's to be expected with Tarantino. The gore, the violence, the blood, the mayhem. Thank you. This is the kind of shit that you're just, like Inglourious Bastards, like this, like The Hateful Eight. There's just like 3 movies in a row where just the violence is packed on the screen and you're just like, yes. Yes, thank you so much. It's so funny. It's so over the top. It's so bloody. Now, this opening sequence here, where Christoph Waltz's character, the doctor, comes in and he's got the freaking bouncing tooth up on his little freaking stagecoach back there, and he comes in and he's talking to the guys. James Remar's character, who plays like 2 different characters in this movie for some weird reason, and just him going, oh, this whole sequence. It just, I felt like in that moment, like when the movie started, I knew I was in for something special. Like I knew, like, in my heart. It just, you know how you get into a movie and just like the first 5 or 10 minutes sets this incredible pace, this incredible atmosphere that you're just like, I'm gonna love this movie. I could feel it. And it might even open your mind up more to be susceptible to having it become a better movie than you may have thought if the first 10 minutes didn't get you in the mood. You know, it's like foreplay before sex, like especially with women. If you don't get them into it and then you do your thing on them, they're just going to be like, well, I mean, I'm not really into this. But if you would have done the foreplay, then even if you were doing almost the exact same thing, they would have been like, yeah, now I'm into it. Now my body's ready for this. That's how I feel like, movies are. That first like 10 minutes is extremely important, and then the finish, much like sex, is the most important. That's the thing you're going to remember more than absolutely anything. If the finish sucks, you're going to be having fantastic sex, or you can be watching a fantastic film, and then the ending just blows it, and you're just like, ugh, like nothing. You're like, that was it? It completely devastates the whole experience. The whole memory is now tainted. It was like, yeah, the whole rest was really good, but ugh, And I don't know. I think that becomes, I feel like that's something that's talked about all the time. Like the finish of a movie is so important, and it's like, I feel like the beginning. Now, don't get me wrong. The whole movie is, but setting that tone right out the gate is of dire importance, because it just gets the audience's appetite wet, and their pussies, since we're talking about sex. Oh Lord, sounds like I'm horny. I might be. I don't know. Yeah, probably am. I always am. Yeah. All right. So I love it. I love when he's just the lighting. This movie is gorgeous. Now, a lot of his movies are. I personally think The Hateful Eight probably is his prettiest movie. Like just the 70mm shots, the big wide shots of the mountains and the snow and all that. Gorgeous. And I'm going to talk about that movie here in a minute, because I have finished all of his movies at this point. I was going to record this review yesterday, but It was so hot in this garage, I was almost passing out during Inglourious Basterds. If you watch my Inglourious Basterds review, you'll see I'm stumbling on my words like every 5 minutes. I'm like pausing because I am dying in that video. I was like, when I came upstairs, I took my shirt off and I wrung it out. No shit. It was that sweat freaking logged. I couldn't believe it. So yeah, there you go. Now, so he gets Django, he leaves the guys with the, the dude pinned under the horse, his leg is broken. I could see, it's hard because you know how much I love to analyze movies, you know how much I like to break down scenes. That's why I don't like doing comedies that much on my channel. I almost never do them, because if a comedy's really landing for me and every single line of dialogue is funny, I want to bring it up. And there's about, I don't know, 600 to 1,000. That's a huge gap right there. We'll say 900 to 1,000. That makes a little, that closes the gap a little more. Lines in this that I would just love to mention. Just the love to point out is this is the line. I'm gonna pick out a couple key ones that are just brilliantly hilarious to me in the moment. But man, every little bit of dialogue, every single thing spoken by Christoph Waltz in this movie, much like Inglourious Basterds, is just hilarious or endearing and sweet or mesmerizing, or he just commands your attention. It's incredible. It's incredible. But when they have that conversation, they go into the bar and the guy runs out and he's like, go get the sheriff, whatever. And he sits down and talks with him and he's like, look, I need to find the Brittle brothers. And even though I'm completely against slavery, I'm unfortunately going to have to use this slavery malarkey to my advantage for the moment. And once you've given me the Brittle brothers, then I will set you free. And then he has to reaffirm, but I do feel bad about it. I just want you to know, I don't like what I have to do here. I'm completely against this, but I do need your assistance, and you technically have to give it to me by the law because I do own you now. And I hate that I have to own you to do this, but I really do need to get this done. But I promise to treat you like an equal and everything. That's just Tarantino. I know I keep saying this kind of shit in my reviews, but it is. It's just the way he's able to break down sequences in something that we've seen before, in past movies and past adaptations of certain events, to be able to take these characters and to put a completely new spin, a logical spin, to take characters and make them think realistically, but make it funny and entertaining, and he's just brilliant. He really is. I know I'm blowing him for the last freaking week here, but he deserves it. I mean, how much time do you think he puts into these scripts? I can only imagine he's working on these damn things for years, perfecting them, because they're just perfect. Anyway, so he shoots the guy, and then he's like, now you can go get the marshal. He comes back with him, and he does the, this man was wanted, and he looks over, and Django's just like, damn. I love that. It just shows how smart he is, and it shows how much Django's starting to kind of come into his own. He's kind of starting to see the man that he's in leagues with now, that he's been partnered up with. And does this guy ever help Django? Holy shit. He helps him in every single way possible. So even though he does use him, he very much pays him back for it. And the Broomhilda story and all that, I feel like that's really magical, the way he talks about it. Just Quentin writing. Now you can tell this part was written for Waltz in mind, for sure, this one. The fact that he makes it's an outlaw, and this is an outlaw. This is a Western set in slavery times in the Deep South. How many movies have you seen like that? That is a rarity, let me tell you. But yeah, he sits down with him, and this is a German gunslinger. Come on, that is Waltz all the way. he's like, how do I get him into this movie? I'll name this girl Brunhilde. She'll have she'll be able to speak German. Like, he wrote this whole damn movie around Waltz because he knew he would kill it. And my God, does he ever. And when he tells him he can pick out his own outfit, this is the first time Django's ever been able to pick out his own clothes since he's been a slave. I don't know how long that's been. Maybe his entire life. I don't know. Slavery went on for 200 fucking years. So I would assume, yes, his entire life. But, you never know. And he picks out the most outrageous outfit imaginable. I think he fucking raided, like, Liberace's closet there. Does Liberace aware that you raid his wardrobe? And when they go to Don Johnson's fucking place, and he tells the slave chick there, like, you need to show him around the lot. And he's like, but you can't treat him like any other slave. He's a free slave. And she's like, you want me to treat him like white folk? And he's like, well, no, I didn't say that. Just the mentality of these people. They can't even fathom a black person even being close. They're not even human to them. It's horrible. I know I'm laughing. It's a fucking horrible part of our history. And of course, it's not funny in actuality. But the way it's presented in the movie, just the mindset of these characters, how the lines are delivered, it's, as I had said in a previous video, I think it was in Inglourious Basterds, I can't remember, but it's realism adjacent. It's like everything, no matter how dark the subject matter is, has levity into it. That's the way Tarantino writes his stuff. Like, even though something horrible is happening, there's just something, maybe up in the corner, or just an air to it that is slightly amusing or light in a way, just to keep the scene not from completely crushing you. Because this is a story about a slave who has to go and rescue his wife, who's been enslaved by, like, kind of the epitome of everything wrong with people of that time in Calvin Candy, all kind of packed into one, and her having been raped and used to pleasure the Mandingo fighters, and, locked in this cage and everything. Like, I can see how people could watch this movie and be like, I don't understand why this is funny. I don't understand why this is entertaining. These are horrible sequences. And I get that. I do get it. Like, I do get it. On paper, that makes sense. When you write that out, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. But when I watch the movie, I can't help but feel, because of how it's made, because of how it's presented, and the presentation is everything, it's funny, but it's also the most important thing about this movie, much like Inglourious Basterds, is it's wildly cathartic and satisfying with its conclusion. If you're going to put the audience and the characters through this hell, there better be some serious payoff in the vengeance department. If this movie ended darkly, now, I'm not a person who's like, every movie has to end happy or every movie has to end horribly. Because you'll meet people like that. You'll meet people who are like, oh, fucking, I can't handle a movie unless it has a happy ending. And then there'll be that other group of people who are like, oh, I hate movies who have happy endings. They all should have shitty endings. And I'm like, well, then that becomes just as predictable as a happy ending. So how about we just meet in the middle, and you'll never know what's going to happen. Maybe people will get away, and maybe they won't. Wouldn't that be something? Then we'd be sitting there like, fuck, I hope they make it out of this. I don't know if they're going to, but they might not. That's the state in which we should always be in the movies, is, mystery and intrigue. And that comes from not knowing what's going to happen next. So if you always have a movie where things don't turn out well, then you know what to expect. So that's silly. Both those arguments are silly. But if this movie, in general, like, this is one of the movies where I would fight, like, no, you can't have a downer ending in this movie. You're putting us through too much. You're having these slaves attacked and killed by dogs. You're making these men fight to the death and gouge each other's eyes out. You're having women raped. You're having... These characters need to die horribly. Otherwise, it's just not going to justify the hell you put us through. Now, yeah, there's plenty of movies where that happens, where the whole movie's a downer and the movie ends a downer and this and that, but that's not entertaining. That's not fun. And Tarantino movies are fun. They just are. And this is a prime example of that. As fucked up as this movie is, it's a blast to watch. Quite literally at times, because people are lifted up and blasted off the floor, but we're going to get there at the end here. All right, moving on. The hood conversation. I mean, how can you not find this to be hilarious? Before that, though, that chick who's getting whipped, could you imagine being whipped? Like by a bullwhip? Have you ever been around an actual bullwhip and heard it crack? It sounds like fucking thunder. It sounds like a lightning bolt just hit right next to your feet. It's insane, the sound that comes off of that thing. I mean, to be whipped by one of those things. Just to think that people actually whip people with those things. They still do. I mean, there's still like canings and there's still stuff like that. I mean, the world is not a perfect place. We do not live in some utopian society at this point, even though we fucking should. We really should. I mean, we're advanced enough as a civilization, scientifically and educationally. We should be there, but we're not. And that's a whole nother conversation. But just to think that was like a generally used practice all the time as a punishment is shockingly cruel. Like, I just could not imagine being whipped. That is horrible. And I've seen it done in a few movies where the skin is literally just being torn from their back, which is exactly what would happen and what exactly did happen. Horrid. But then to watch Django turn it on, you know, the Brittle brothers and take the thing and crack it there, and the guy has all the freaking Bible verses, you know, glued or stuck to his body, and he shoots him straight in the heart. I like the way you die, boy. Like, this movie is just watching a black man in the most oppressive time to ever be a black person in this country kind of run around and run amok and show a bunch of idiots, you know, what's what. And it's just, man, I mean, I know I'm not black, so I probably can't feel this movie as much, but it is still as cathartic because, yeah, I mean, as a white person, I'm fucking, you know, horribly embarrassed of some of these. And I'm German too. Jesus Christ, man. It's like the double whammy. I'm a white American and my ancestors come from Germany. It's like my whole lineage is fucked. Yeah, I don't even want to know what people in my past were doing. But that ain't me. I wouldn't do any of that shit. I promise you. I got none of that in me. Anyway, okay, the hood conversation. Getting back to that, have Jonah Hill's in here for a moment, and that in theaters was just so fun. Like, the whole theater was laughing. The guys are just complaining about their eye holes and how they can't see out of shit and all that. Yet another line, another bit of dialogue, another scene written by Tarantino. Like, you'll see guys in hoods riding in and fucking doing all this racist bullshit, you know, lynch mobs and whatnot. But you'll never find a sequence cut right into the middle of it about them, like, in a comedic way, talking about how the eye holes on their hoods were not cut correctly. That brings the levity in to a lynching scene during slavery times. You see what I mean? That's what I'm saying with Tarantino. He has a way to inject humor into the humorless. It's incredible. So there you go. And that scene is fucking so funny. Blows them up, and then we get to see that Django is a natural shot. And we get a true partnership here between them. And man, just watching them cut these guys down and bring them back, awesome sequences, awesome stuff. And of course, Tarantino, as usual, even though this is set in the 1800s, he is using contemporary modern music, which I feel like fits this film perfectly. Not a big rap fan, never have been, but I love the use of it in this movie. It fits, and it's fucking fantastic. I also, you know, And nah, I'm not gonna talk about that. It'll take too damn long. I'm already at like 30 fucking minutes. We gotta move on. And this movie is like every genre combined yet again. This has got comedy, this has got action, this has got horror, this has got it all. This is like every freaking imaginable genre wrapped all into one ball. One-stop shop, as we had said in the last one. And then the Mandingo fighting is just, that's some hard shit to watch. Just watching these guys beat each other to death and awful. Just awful stuff. And for him to have to pretend to be a slaver, and that sequence where he has to tell him, like, he doesn't give a shit what he does to D'Artagnan, which reminds me of Stranger Things. There you go, Dustin, little shout out there. The Three Musketeers reference. But yeah, just that, oh my God, he has such dedication to finding his wife. Like, he is committed to this shit, and he does not care. He has to go as hard can be. He has to have a bunch of slaves that look at him like he's the most despicable person on earth, a black slaver. And then he has to go in there and he has to let a man be ripped apart by dogs and sit there like he couldn't give a fuck. And Waltz's character here can't handle it. He jumps up, but he sticks with him because he knows what the ultimate plan is. But to be able to do that, to stick to your convictions like that, to be able to look at a man like that who's so beaten and broken, and it's like, Mr. Candy, I can't fight anymore, and you can see how broken he is, how beat he is. It's horrid. But yet again, the way it's done, there's an air of humor in some of it. The way Waltz is delivering his lines, the way Leo is bringing, and Leo is just incredible in this movie. Awful. I mean, you want to hate him, and you do. It's perfect. But that's probably the roughest scene in the entire movie. It's almost completely void of any light at all. That one was hard, and that has Zoe Bell in it, the amazing Zoe Bell, who I absolutely adore, who finally got a good amount of screen time in Death Proof, but played the bride in the Kill Bill stunt sequences. So most of the fighting you see in Kill Bill from the bride is Zoe Bell in a blonde wig. But Zoe Bell is just, oh, I love her, man. And we get Tom Savini in there as well, which is kind of cool to see him, seeing as how he has had run-ins with Tarantino before, for sure, whether it be Planet Terror or Sex Machine in From Dusk Till Dawn, which I will definitely get to those. I love when, this is one of my favorite lines in the movie, when Django comes through the door and Broomhilda collapses, and he says, Dr. what's his fucking name? Dr. Oh, shit. What is it? I can't believe it. King Schultz. There it is. Dr. Schultz says to him something along the lines of, like, you silver tongue, you. Oh, so fucking funny. It just makes me laugh. It's such a sweet, endearing moment that they're reunited like that. And then Candy goes down, and he is tipped off by, well, I can't even say the title of Samuel Jackson's character here. Steven, right? That's his actual name. He's tipped off by him, and he comes back in, and he displays his knowledge in phrenology, which was used really heavily during slavery times by people trying to justify their horrendous acts. So I actually researched this a decent amount after the movie, just kind of looking into the background of phrenology and what exactly, how true that was, the dimples and all that stuff. And that was a real thing. That was actually something that was accepted by a good amount of people, which, yet again, this Tarantino kind of bringing something to light that was otherwise forgotten and never really much talked about in any film I've ever seen on this subject. So for him to bring that out, it's just like, man, you're so deluded. You are such a deluded piece of shit. I like how he cuts his hand in that sequence and just keeps acting. That was actually blood. I can only imagine, though, that they cleaned the blood off of his hand, I would hope, and then put fake blood on his hand for when he rubbed it all over freaking Kerry Washington's face. Because I would imagine that she was like, you just rubbed all your blood on me. You have sex with every supermodel on Earth. I need you to get a blood test right now, and if you have anything, I'm suing the shit out of you. I have to imagine he would not rub his actual blood on her. And whew, I like how, I mean, Waltz's, Schultz here, he can't let the dog attack go. He just keeps playing it in his mind, and Candy, like, they just could have left. They could have just left, and that would have been that, but at least, we wouldn't have got the payback, the real payback that was necessary here. And he forces him to shake his hand. He really was going to leave. That was it. I'm done. I'm walking out. Fuck it. Fine. And when he comes up, I love this sequence. It was probably my favorite moment in the entire movie. When he shoots him, Candy looks down, he turns around, and he looks at Django, and he just goes, I couldn't resist. He legit just was like, I know I'm going to die. I know this is going to cost me my life, but this guy is such a horrible piece of shit. I cannot let him exist. I can't do it. He pushed me too far. I could not resist killing him. Amazing. And then the body exploded. This whole sequence of him just shooting everyone up and their bodies exploding and the music playing and that guy sitting in the doorway and getting his legs shot into and screaming. Hilarious. And just amazing gore, amazing blood, freaking squibs. Jesus, these were huge squibs. These were monstrous. These things were sending out Evil Dead levels of blood. And then, he has to give up, and I can only imagine that has to be a fake dick. Okay? It's ridiculous. It doesn't even look real from what I can tell. We get to see a real close shot up of his taint, his hairy taint. But that has to be a fake dick there. That was pretty funny. He's just like holding on to his dick when he comes in, and he lets it go, and I'm like, is that a real dick? That can't be his real dick. Would he let Waltz and Goggins fucking hold on to his dick in a scene? I don't know. Maybe. But yeah, there you go. Quentin Tarantino plays a role in this, and I had read or I'd heard that he was not supposed to play that role, that he had to take that role last minute because some actor bailed out or something, and he took it on. And I like his Australian accent in this. I thought it was pretty damn good. I was impressed. And when he shoots Tarantino and his body completely explodes, he shoots him in the dynamite. Awesome. And then he goes in, he leaves the freaking stuff with the slaves. He emancipates the slaves, although technically they probably would have been rounded up. I mean, where are they going to run in Mississippi? That's shit, right around the Candyland plantation. Those guys are just running around out there. I hope they got away, but where'd they go? And I love when he goes up. One of the sweetest moments is earlier in the movie. He says to Candy, he says, I would tell you Auf Wiedersehen, which means, I think that's the word, right? Auf Wiedersehen? Whatever. That, until we meet again. But he's like, but I'm going to say goodbye to you. Like, I don't want to ever see your ass again. And when Django comes up to his body, he's like, Auf Wiedersehen, like, till we see each other again, like in the afterlife or whatever. It's a really super sweet moment that you have to kind of remember back to a line he says to Candy there, but beautiful line. Because, I mean, this guy did everything for him. Everything. So it's good to see him pay respect to the man. And then, he goes in and he executes the household. Amazing. Shoots Goggins in the dick. And the scene, probably the hardest I laughed in the entire fucking movie, and probably the hardest the entire theater laughed, is when Leo's sister in the movie, he's like, say goodbye to her, and then he shoots her, and she's just like yanked out of the room. She's lifted up off the ground. She must have been attached to a freaking rig that yanked her out of the room, but it looks so funny. Broomhilda is absolutely adorable when she's out on the horse and she like puts her ear, plugs her ears up, and then when he comes out and she like celebrates, and then he comes out and he peacocks with his horse, and oh, the horse, I forgot to mention Schultz's horse is when he bows, when he's like, I'm Dr. King Schultz and this is my horse, and he puts his head, hilarious, just so cute. But his peacocking with the horse, this is why this is my favorite movie. You get the revenge, you get the sweet moments, you get the horrible moments that are later then justified by the revenge. It's everything all in one. Great characters, great acting, lots of gore, lots of revenge, lots of amazingness all around. There you go. Django Unchained, my favorite of Quentin Tarantino's work. Moving on to The Hateful Eight.